you got that other Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit, freed after 5 years. He was held by Hamas in Gaza. The Israelis released more than 1,000 Palestinians. You say, Gershon, right now, that that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen now.
Again, why would the Israelis are determined to bring all of their troops home? And if there remains, they can bring them home. If Hamas has an Israeli soldier, why wouldn't Israel do now what it did then through your good offices?
There are a lot of reasons. The main reason is that they're in Gaza now and they have the ability to attack Hamas from within Gaza. I would suspect that the very next step after they finish this operation that they're shelling in Rafah is that they're going to go up after the Hamas leadership. And they will capture them or kill them one by one until they get the soldier back, again, dead or alive. The Israelis are in no mood now to negotiate with Hamas, not about political issues and certainly not about a soldier. There was so much anger in Israel from the prison release that was associated with the negotiations through the Kerry mission with Abu Mazen, with Mahmoud Abbas. There's no sentiment in Israel today that would allow any government of Israel to negotiate a prisoner exchange for an Israeli soldier there. The sentiment in Israel that we're going to hear more and more tonight from ministers in the government and the cabinet is going to be to finish the job, to finish off Hamas. Now, this is a very dangerous situation, and Hamas doesn't understand the extent of the anger in Israel right now if there is, in fact, a soldier abducted, and the wrath of Israel is going to come down on Hamas. This is not going to end the game.
Over 40 Palestinians have been killed in the Gaza city of Rafah following the collapse of a U.S. and UN-backed ceasefire. Israeli tanks reportedly opened fire in Rafah just hours after the 72-hour ceasefire began. Israel is claiming Hamas first broke the truce by firing rockets from southern Gaza. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has launched a major effort to locate a soldier captured near Rafah. The IDF says the soldier was captured when Israeli forces trying to destroy a tunnel were attacked by militants, including a suicide bomber. A senior Hamas leader says the soldier was captured before the ceasefire began.
Israel can defeat Hamas militarily, but you can't defeat an idea, and you can't defeat the will of the Palestinian people in Gaza to change the essence of their life there from the prison they've been living in into a life of freedom. This is a just cause on their side as they see it. Hamas are the ones who are standing up for them. I'm sure that right now all over Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, East Jerusalem, the Arab world, people are out in the streets cheering and giving out candies and sweets because Hamas has apparently abducted an Israeli soldier.
And you know, though, over the years of Israel's existence, 66 years, there's often been these lopsided exchanges, not just for a soldier who may be alive, but even for the remains of an Israeli soldier, 10 to 1, 50 to 1, 100 to 1. In the case of Gilad Shalit, 1,000 to 1.
Talks have been scheduled to be held this weekend in Cairo. Even before today's outbreak of violence, the U.S. and Israel said they would refuse to negotiate directly with Hamas.
The Palestinian death toll has now reached at least 1,460, mostly civilian, surpassing the number of Palestinians killed during Operation Cast Lead nearly 6 years ago. 64 Israeli soldiers have been killed in addition to 3 civilians. We go now to Gaza City, where we're joined by Raji Sarani. He is the director of the Palestinian Center for Human Rights in Gaza, serves on the executive board of the International Federation for Human Rights, a past winner of the Right Livelihood Award and the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Raji. Can you talk about this latest news? The ceasefire is over. It was supposed to be 72 hours, and an Israeli soldier has been captured. 40, at least we understand, Palestinians have been killed in Rafah.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, situation is back again to square number one in Gaza. All over Gaza borders and inside the Gaza borders, there is firing by rockets, aeroplanes, gunboats, artillery, tanks, and business as usual as for the last 24 days. The Israelis launching their offensive all over the place. They get deeper in many other places. You can hear and feel that all over Gaza Strip, especially in the eastern northern part of it, especially focused on Rafah area. Except, like 1 hour, 1.5 hour, people were able to move with some journalists, to some areas in the eastern area of Khan Yunis, Shijaiya, but otherwise, nobody was able to go anywhere. In Khiza'a, after the ceasefire began at 8 o'clock, many corpses has been found and discovered in the streets of Khiza'a, Abasan, and in Zanna area. Many executions suspected to be happened, by the Israeli army for people, including, handicapped people, girls and boys. The destruction, massive. It's a crazy picture, very surrealistic. We never ever, realized something as such, can happen in such dense populated area in Gaza, filled with civilians. So practically no ceasefire. The offensive continue, the brutality, the war crimes happening against civilians. Israel says this was in retaliation of kidnapping an Israeli soldier by resistance. But actually, this had happened according to the resistance sources who declared that early in the morning from some mosques in Rafah, 6:30. So resistance said this had happened before the ceasefire. That's why Israel tried to lie, and they feel they lost a lot by kidnapping this soldier, high-ranking soldier, as the resources of resistance say, and that's why they just got mad and they began to bombard all over the place again.
Raji.
Every time that happens, some voices in Israel say, you know what, you're only encouraging the taking of more Israeli soldiers by doing this because it makes them seem so valuable. And the last time that Prime Minister Netanyahu made this exchange, he was criticized. And you say that the country now has changed.
He was criticized, but he had 26 members of his cabinet support it. The head of the Mossad, the head of the Shin Bet, the chief of the army supported it. 80% of the people supported it then. It was a different situation. And we're in the midst of a war right now, and no one is going to tolerate, and no one's going to call for Netanyahu to negotiate a prisoner exchange, certainly not with Hamas. After the tunnels that we've seen, off the rockets that we've seen, Hamas is perceived as the ultimate threat to Israel's existence. We shouldn't be talking to them at all, is what the people of Israel say, what the government of Israel says. So I think it's not a similar situation. I think that we've seen the end of prisoner exchanges like that.
President Obama and Secretary Kerry have been working closely with UN officials, with Israeli officials, Palestinian officials, and other interested parties to try to bring about a humanitarian ceasefire. That was dogged diplomatic work that was required. We finally thought we had reached an agreement just yesterday for a humanitarian ceasefire. The Israelis, of course, are reporting this morning that that ceasefire was broken and that apparently Hamas individuals used the cover of a humanitarian ceasefire to attack Israeli soldiers and even to take one hostage. That would be a rather barbaric violation of the ceasefire agreement. We would encourage the international community to respond to this and condemn it in the strongest possible terms.
We have Mohammed Omer on the phone with us, who's also in Gaza, the award-winning Palestinian journalist. He is from Gaza, and he's been closely following the developments there, his family there. Mohammed, what do you understand took place in Gaza? In Rafah, rather.
Well, right now in Rafah, Amy, the situation is still deteriorating. There are at least about 90 people who are killed. The ambulance crew are unable to get into the area of Hay al-Salam and Hay al-Junaina. When we know about these areas, they're about 3 to 4 kilometers inside Rafah. And the people are trying to evacuate their homes, but unfortunately they're not allowed because of the constant bombings and the artillery shelling. The tank shells have reached many areas in this area. It's like shooting a barrel basically in a very closed and densely populated area in Rafah. Remember that Hay al-Salam is on the top of a hill, and you could see the rest of Rafah. You could see basically 170,000 inhabitants just in front of you, and you can just bomb them any moment you want, and that's what's happening. Most of the colleagues and journalists at Abu Yusuf and Najjar evacuated the hospital because the hospital has received the warning that it's going to be bombed. So Abu Yusuf Najjar is the only hospital in the southern part of the Gaza Strip in Rafah, and now there is another private hospital which is supposed to be for giving birth, and it's the only one which is receiving people and victims, and it's still ill-equipped with all necessary equipment. The situation in Rafah as well. There is a lack of communications. Even the colleagues and journalists who are in Rafah, they could not make phone calls with one another because the network is down and the electricity has been down in the last 2 to 3 hours.
And explain the significance of this area of Rafah on the border with Egypt.
This area is very close to its border with Egypt, and there is the Rafah crossing, and I'm just getting some new appeals from 71 internationals who are stuck right now. They are on the Egyptian gate. The Egyptians are not allowing them into the Egyptian side, and the Palestinian side, they have evacuated the Rafah crossing. The Rafah crossing is under constant bombing. Among them, there are Germans, there are Norwegians, there are Americans, and there are Egyptians of Palestinian origin. They are trying to escape the Gaza Strip, but they cannot. The Egyptian authorities are saying that they are not going to allow them to get outside of the Gaza Strip until there is an approval from Cairo. A number of embassies, they're trying to call for the Egyptian government in order to allow their nationals to escape the constant bombing which they are subjected under. Rafah crossing, of course, is one of the main areas well known as the only entrance and exit for passengers traveling. It has been mostly closed in the last few years, particularly under the administration of Sisi and Mubarak, of course. And also there is the Kerem Shalom is about 2 to 3 kilometers away from Rafah crossing, which is the only commercial crossing which is supposed to get commercial activities into the Gaza Strip. Now, the timing of this is important. This happened just before the ceasefire kicks in, and that's very important to keep note of that, because it happened just at 6:30. This operation was ended, even the capturing of soldiers by the resistance, and namely Hamas here, the Qassam brigades. So I would say that Israel is trying to sabotage all the international efforts for a ceasefire in the next 72 hours, and that is the attempt here. I would expect the situation is even to deteriorate more, because we are seeing right now the Israeli artillery shelling are just getting closer and closer, and there are also a number of soldiers who are taking positions in different buildings and trying to use the snipers to shoot at people.
Mohammed,
and we would encourage those who have influence with Hamas to get them back onto the terms of the ceasefire and to get them to abide by the agreements that they struck just yesterday.
Well, the ambassador, Mansour, who was just on the show talking to Kate, obviously the representative of Mahmoud Abbas, said they are not ready to take ownership of the capture of that soldier, that they don't know what happened. So that then takes us one step back to why this may have happened. Do you feel that the U.S. may have somehow missed on its efforts to get everybody on the same page here? Because Mansour was saying, oh yes, Israel could keep clearing tunnels, but only behind lines on their side. And then we had the spokesperson for the political wing of Hamas say, I didn't know anything about Israel being allowed to do defensive maneuvers. Did the U.S. somehow fail to communicate the terms of this ceasefire properly?
Chris, what you saw is you saw President Obama, Secretary Kerry take a leadership role in working closely with the UN, with the Israelis, with the Palestinians to bring everybody to the table to work out a painstaking, detailed agreement to try to strike a 72-hour ceasefire for humanitarian reasons.
There were reports of bodies lying in the streets of Rafah. Have ambulances been able to reach the wounded?
No, ambulances, they are not being able to reach the wounded, because the Abu Yusuf Najjar hospital has been targeted, and ambulance crew have been targeted, and areas that are under a constant attack is right now actually behind the Israeli bulldozers and tanks, which means these areas is off limits. You cannot get into these areas at all.